You don't own this anymore. Her voice cracked like a whip across the empty road, sharp enough to make the security guard flinch. Sandra Whitmore stood there in her crimson blazer, the one she wore to every HOA meeting. The one that screamed authority, pointing at the steel gate behind her like it was a monument to her power. This is community property now. And until you pay what you owe, until you sign what needs signing, this gate stays locked. I didn't move. Didn't raise my voice. Just stood there on my side of that brand new padlock. Keys to my truck dangling from one hand. The original property deed from 1972 folded in my back pocket. The deed that said this road, this exact stretch of dirt and gravel I'd driven 1,000 times, belonged to me. Had always belonged to me. Sandra, I said quietly, pulling out my phone. I'm recording this. For the record. Her face went crimson to match her blazer. Record all you want. The Hollow Creek Homeowners Association has legal authority here. You're trespassing on our maintenance road. Behind her. The guard, some kid in a cheap tactical vest with security patches, shifted uncomfortably. He knew. I could see it in his eyes. He knew this wasn't right. But Sandra was just getting started. She strutted forward, her black patent leather heels clicking against the asphalt she'd poured without my permission. Her perfectly styled blonde hair not moving an inch in the October wind. She stopped 3 feet from the gate, close enough that I could see the fury in her eyes, the absolute certainty that she was right. $17,000, she said, voice dropping to something almost conversational. That's what you owe. 3 years of back dues. Security. Road maintenance. Community improvements. She smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd seen in my 48 years. Pay it. Mr. Brennan. Or you can sit on that property of yours and rot. Because this gate, it's not coming down. I looked past her at the 8-foot chain-link fence stretching into the trees on both sides, at the razor wire coiled along the top, at the concrete footings that definitely weren't there when I'd left for Montana 3 weeks ago. And I realized something that settled cold and certain in my gut. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was war. Sandra Whitmore had just made the biggest miscalculation of her life. Because what she didn't know, what she was about to find out, was that I'd spent 23 years as a forensic archaeologist, documenting evidence, building cases, proving things that people thought were buried forever. And I don't lose. Not when I have the truth. Not when I have documentation. Not when I have time and patience and the kind of methodical precision that turns lies into evidence and evidence into justice. 3 weeks. I said softly. Still recording. You've got 3 weeks before everything you've built here collapses. Every signature you forged, every rule you invented, every dollar you stole. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. I'll see you in court. Sandra? I turned, walked back to my truck, got in. And as I drove away, leaving her standing at that illegal gate on my legal easement, I started making a list. Because when someone tries to cage you on your own land, you don't fight with your fists. You fight with evidence. 3 weeks earlier, I'd driven up that same road thinking I was coming home. After 15 years away, 15 years of dig sites and university consultations and museum work that kept me moving, I was finally ready to settle back on the land my grandfather had bought in 1972. The house looked exactly the same. Two-story farmhouse, white clapboard siding, green shutters, sitting on 43 acres of Tennessee hill country about 12 miles outside Chattanooga. The kind of place where you could hear the creek running and the wind through the pines and absolutely nothing else. Perfect. Except it wasn't perfect. Because as I'd come up the last hill before my property, I'd seen something that made me pull over and stare. A gate. Steel. Industrial. The kind you see at construction sites or military installations. Stretched across the entire width of the road MY, road with fresh concrete footings bolted into bedrock on both sides. A sign hung from the center, private property, Hollow Creek HOA, no trespassing. I'd sat there for a full minute, engine idling, trying to understand what I was looking at. The road was private access. My private access. Deeded easement from 1972, recorded with the county. Never challenged. Never transferred. And now, there was a gate. I'd gotten out slowly, walked up to it, took photos from every angle. The lock was industrial-grade hardened steel. The fence extended 20 feet on either side into the forest. Fresh paint smell, mixing with cut metal and concrete dust. Someone had built this recently. Very recently. I'd checked the mailbox at the roadside old metal box that had been there since my grandfather's time. Inside was a single white envelope with my name typed on the front. James Brennan. I'd opened it right there. Notice of mandatory HOA membership. Hollow Creek Homeowners Association. Dear Mr. Brennan, your property at 4782 Hickory Hollow Road has been determined to fall within the jurisdiction of the Hollow Creek Homeowners Association, Incorporated March 2021. As such, you are required to 1. Pay 3 years of retroactive dues, $17. 000. 2. Sign the attached membership agreement. 3. Comply with all HOA covenants and restrictions. 4. Attend mandatory board meeting October 14th, 7 p.m. Failure to comply will result in restricted access and legal action. Sincerely, Sandra Whitmore, HOA President. I'd read it twice. Then I'd folded it carefully, put it in my jacket pocket, and driven straight to the Hamilton County Clerk's office before it closed. The woman behind the counter reading glasses on a chain. Nameplate reading Betty had. Pulled up my property records without question. Brennan Property. Hickory Hollow Road, she'd said, clicking through screens. Original deed, 1972. 43 acres. Easement access via existing dirt road to County Road 41. Established and recorded same year. She'd printed it. 3 pages. Every word proving what I already knew. That road was mine. Had always been mine. And no HOA incorporated in 2021 or any other year had any legal right to block it. I'd taken the deed home, spread it across my kitchen table, and started digging. Because that's what I do. I dig. I document. I uncover things people think are buried. And what I found over the next 3 days made my blood run cold. The Hollow Creek HOA website was professionally designed. Smiling families. Pristine lawns. A mission statement about preserving property values and community standards. And at the top of the board of directors page, Sandra Whitmore's photograph. 50-something. Sharp features. Blonde hair pulled back in a style that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Wearing the same crimson-red blazer she'd wear to our first confrontation. tailored perfectly to hug her frame, worn open over a black silk blouse cut just low enough to be calculated. Below that, a pencil skirt in matching crimson with a subtle slit, and those black patent leather heels that clicked like a countdown timer. Red lipstick, always red, glossy enough to catch light even in a photograph. Her bio said she was a real estate attorney who'd served as HOA president since incorporation and was committed to protecting property values through vigorous enforcement of community standards. Vigorous enforcement. I'd remember that phrase. I'd clicked through to the bylaws. 23 pages of regulations covering everything from lawn height to exterior paint colors to acceptable vehicle aesthetics. And buried in Section 14. Subsection C, any property within HOA boundaries utilizing shared access roads must comply with all HOA regulations and fee structures. Non-compliance may result in access restrictions. Shared access roads. My road wasn't shared. It was deeded private access, but they were claiming it anyway. I'd pulled up the HOA incorporation documents from the county website. Filed March 15th, 2021. Articles of Incorporation. Bylaws. Board member list. And on page 12, a boundary map. The map showed the HOA territory shaded in blue, the new subdivision to the west of my property. About 200 homes on what used to be farmland. Clean streets. Identical houses, golf course lawns, and my property clearly marked with parcel number HC4782 was shaded blue as well. According to their map, I was inside HOA boundaries, but when I'd pulled up the county's official zoning map, my property was clearly outside. By nearly half a mile, someone had redrawn the boundaries, and someone had filed it as official. I'd made a list old habit from fieldwork. Questions. 1. When was HOA actually incorporated? 2. What is the legal boundary per county records? 3. Was my property ever legally included? 4. Who authorized the gate construction? 5. Where did they get permission to pour concrete on my easement? I'd underline that last one twice, because you can't just block a legal easement. Not without a court order. Not without due process. And I hadn't been served, hadn't been notified, hadn't been consulted. Just came home to a locked gate and a demand for $17,000. That night, I'd set up a camera on my windowsill facing the road. Motion activated. Started recording. If they wanted to play games, I'd document every second. Because in my line of work, you learn one fundamental truth. Evidence doesn't lie. People lie. Documents can be forged. Signatures can be faked. But photographs don't lie. Timestamps don't lie. GPS coordinates don't lie. And by the time I was done, I'd have enough evidence to bury Sandra Whitmore's little kingdom so deep, she'd never dig it out. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. 3 sharp knocks on my door. I'd been expecting it. I opened the door with my phone already recording. 3 people stood on my porch. Sandra Whitmore in front, wearing the crimson blazer like armor. Behind her, 2 others, a man in his 60s with a polo shirt and khaki pants, and a younger woman holding a clipboard like it was a sacred text. Sandra extended her hand. I didn't take it. Her smile didn't falter. Mr. Brennan. I'm Sandra Whitmore, HOA President. We need to discuss your property's compliance status. Her voice was smooth, confident. The voice of someone used to being obeyed. I leaned against the doorframe, phone visible in my hand. Red recording light, obvious. I don't have a compliance status. I have a deed from 1972 with an easement that predates your HOA by 49 years. The smile tightened fractionally. That's actually what we need to clarify. The county rezoned this area last year. Your property now falls within our jurisdiction. I'd done my research. Spent 3 days on it. Rezoning doesn't transfer property rights, and it doesn't override a recorded easement. The road, she said, as if explaining to a child, is maintained by the HOA. We've invested considerable funds grading, drainage, gravel, security infrastructure. It's only fair that you contribute. Show me the documentation, I said. Prove the road is yours. Prove I consented to any transfer of maintenance responsibility. The clipboard woman started flipping through papers frantically. Sandra raised a hand to stop her. Mr. Brennan, if you're questioning our authority, I suggest you attend Monday's board meeting, 7 p.m. at the community center. We can address all your concerns there. I stepped forward. Not aggressive. Just enough to close the distance slightly. I'm not questioning your authority. I'm stating a fact. You don't have any. Not over my land. Not over my easement. And that gate? That's a legal restraint. I could have the sheriff cut it down today. For the first time, real anger flashed in her eyes. But her voice stayed controlled. You could try. But I have a legal team that would file an injunction before you touched a bolt cutter. We're not here to fight. We're offering you a chance to comply voluntarily before this becomes complicated. There it was. The threat wrapped in silk. What statute are you citing? I asked calmly. What specific law gives you the right to block a deeded easement? She didn't hesitate. Tennessee HOA Statute 73B. Shared infrastructure, maintenance, and access control. I made a note on my phone, right in front of her. Statute 73B. Got it. I'll look that up. The man behind her cleared his throat nervously. Sandra, maybe we should. She cut him off with a look. Then back to me. Monday, 7 p.m. If you don't attend, we proceed with enforcement. Fines. Liens. Continued access restrictions. I'll be there. I said, and I'll bring my documentation. All of it. She nodded. Smiled, that terrible smile. We look forward to resolving this amicably. They left. I watched from the window as they walked to a silver Lexus parked at the gate. Talked among themselves. The man kept glancing back nervously. The clipboard woman was shaking her head. Sandra stood with her arms crossed, in complete control. When they drove away, I went straight to my laptop. Searched Tennessee HOA Statute 73B. Nothing. Didn't exist. Not in state law. Not in county ordinances. Not anywhere. She'd lied. On camera. With witnesses. I saved the video to 3 separate cloud services, made 2 local backups, and added it to my evidence folder. Then I opened a new document and started typing timeline of harassment. Saturday, October 5th, 8:05 a.m. Sandra Whitmore and 2 HOA board members arrived at residence, claimed jurisdiction over property based on non-existent rezoning. cited false statute, Tennessee HOA statute 73BDOES, not exist. Threatened enforcement actions including liens and continued access restrictions. Evidence, video recording, witness statements, GPS timestamp. I called the county clerk's office. Got voicemail. Left a detailed message requesting written confirmation of any rezoning affecting parcel HC 4782. Then I did what I should have done first. I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Rebecca Santos, real estate attorney I'd worked with 7 years ago on a land dispute for a dig site in Kentucky. She'd been sharp then. I was betting she still was. She answered on the second ring. I explained everything. The gate. The fence. The demand for $17,000. The false statute. The claim of rezoning. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, do you have documentation? 50 pages and counting. Bring it to my office Monday morning. 9 a.m. This is textbook illegal restraint, possibly extortion. We can file for an emergency injunction. Relief loosened something in my chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If they're lying about statutes and rezoning, they're probably lying about a lot more. Bring everything. I spent the rest of Saturday reviewing my notes, cross-referencing property lines on the county GIS system. My land was clearly marked 43 acres. The HOA boundary stopped 3/4 of a mile to the west. They weren't even close to having jurisdiction. Sunday morning, a black SUV appeared. Same vehicle that had driven by slowly twice yesterday. It parked across from my driveway and just sat there. Engine off. Tinted windows. No movement. I took photos. License plate. Make. Model. Ran it through public records. Registered to Hollow Creek Community Association. Official surveillance. I set up a second camera aimed at the road. Let it record continuously. The SUV stayed for 3 hours. Then left. Came back that afternoon for another 2 hours. They wanted me to know they were watching. Wanted me to feel threatened. Instead, I felt something else. Certainty. Because people who have legitimate authority don't need to intimidate. They don't need surveillance and threats and lies about statutes. They just enforce the actual law. Sunday evening. Another letter. Hand-delivered. Tucked in my screen door. Final notice. Failure to attend Monday's meeting will result in immediate legal action and permanent access restrictions. I photographed it. Added it to the evidence log. Then I smiled. Because Sandra Whitmore was escalating, and escalation meant desperation. She needed me to comply. Needed me to pay. Needed me to sign whatever agreement gave her authority over my property, which meant she knew, somewhere deep down, that she didn't actually have it. Tomorrow, I'd go to her meeting. Sit in that room. Let her make her case. And then I'd dismantle it with the one thing she couldn't forge, couldn't fake, couldn't threaten away, the truth. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, I was sitting in Rebecca Santos's office. Modern building, downtown Chattanooga. 10th floor with a view of the Tennessee River. She'd read through my documentation in silence. All 53 pages. Every photo. Every timestamp. Every recorded conversation. When she finished, she set the folder down and looked at me with something like awe. James, this is one of the clearest cases of illegal restraint I've seen in 15 years of practice. She tapped the deed. Your easement is ironclad. recorded in 72, never challenged, never transferred. And this, she pulled out the photo of the gate. This is criminal, not just civil. They're physically preventing you from accessing public roads. So, what do we do? She opened her laptop, started typing. We file for an emergency injunction today. I'll have it ready by noon. We request immediate removal of all barriers, court-ordered access restoration, and we file a separate civil suit for damages. Damages. Emotional distress. Loss of access? Potential loss of income if you've had to cancel work. She looked up. Have you? I thought about it. I had a consultation with the Hunter Museum. Had to reschedule because I couldn't guarantee I could get off my property. She nodded. Typing. Document that. Every inconvenience. Every loss. We're building a damages claim that'll make them think twice about doing this to anyone else. I left her office at 10:30. Drove toward home or tried to. The guard at the gate stopped me. Same routine. Clipboard. List. Not authorized. I didn't argue. Just turned around, parked half a mile down the road, and hiked through the woods to my house. 45 minutes of rough terrain? But I made it? There was an envelope on my porch when I arrived. FedEx. Official looking. I opened it carefully. Inside, a document on court letterhead. Superior Court. Hamilton County, Tennessee. Notice of injunction. Hearing. Case No. HC 20241847. Plaintiff Hollow Creek Homeowners Association. Defendant James Robert Brennan. Hearing date Thursday, October 10th, 10 a.m. I'm Martin L. Pierce. I read through it. The HOA was seeking an injunction against ME, claiming I'd made threats against board members, trespassed on HOA property, damaged community security infrastructure. All lies. But there it was, an official-looking print. I called Rebecca immediately. I just got served. They're filing against me. Injunction hearing Thursday. Pause. Then give me the case number. I read it to her. Silence for a long moment. Then her voice came back. Tight and controlled. James. I'm looking at the Hamilton County docket right now. There is no case under that number. Nothing scheduled for Thursday. My stomach dropped. You're saying this is fake? I'm calling the clerk's office. Hold on. 3 minutes of hold music. Then she came back. There's no case. No hearing. No Judge Martin Pierce in Hamilton County. Her voice was ice. That document is forged. Whoever created it committed a felony. I looked at the signature at the bottom, filed on behalf of Hollow Creek HOA by Sandra Whitmore. President. She's trying to make me think I'm being sued. I said slowly. Make me look paranoid or unstable. Worse than that. If you'd shown up to a non-existent hearing, you'd have damaged your credibility for any real legal proceedings. This is calculated. James. Systematic. Can we use this? Absolutely. We're adding felony forgery and criminal impersonation to the complaint. This woman just handed us everything we need. I photographed the fake summons from every angle, sealed it in a plastic sleeve to preserve fingerprints, and added it to evidence folder. Then I went to the county clerk's office. Had to hike out through the woods again. catch a bus, but I made it. Betty at the counter pulled up the HOA incorporation documents without question. I asked for the complete file. She printed 22 pages. I sat at a table in the corner and went through them line by line. Page 12 stopped me cold. Property owner consent form. The following property owners consent to inclusion in Hollow Creek HOA jurisdiction. 5 names. 4 I didn't recognize. And 1 I did. James R. Brennan, with a signature next to it. I stared at that signature. It wasn't mine. Not even close. I pulled out my driver's license. Compared signatures. Different slant. Different letter formation. Different everything. They'd forged my signature, put my name on a legal document without my knowledge or consent. That wasn't just fraud. That was identity theft. I took photos. Then I requested a certified copy from Betty. She stamped it. Charged me $8. I walked out with proof in my hand that Sandra Whitmore had built her entire authority on lies. Called Rebecca from the parking lot. They forged my signature on the incorporation documents. I have certified copies. She swore softly. Then, come to my office. Now, by the time I hiked back and caught the bus downtown, it was 3 p.m. Rebecca examined the forged signature, compared it to my real one from the deed. Not even close, she said, laying them side by side. This is Exhibit A. Fraudulent incorporation. Your property was never legally part of their jurisdiction. She pulled up something on her computer. I did some digging on Sandra Whitmore. Real estate attorney. Licensed in Tennessee since 2003. But there's something interesting. She turned the screen to show me. Similar case in North Carolina. 2017. HOA president accused of forging homeowner consent for a pool renovation project. Case settled out of court, $85,000 paid to plaintiffs. She has a history. A pattern, Rebecca corrected. And patterns are powerful in court. This isn't a mistake or misunderstanding. It's method. We spent 2 hours building the case. Count 1. Fraudulent incorporation forged signature. Count 2. Illegal restraint gate blocking legal easement. Count 3. Extortion demanding payment under false pretenses. Count 4. Forgery, fake court summons. Count 5. Criminal impersonation falsely representing court authority. Each count had evidence. Photos. Documents. Timestamps. Recordings? Rebecca leaned back. We file tomorrow morning. Emergency injunction demanding immediate gate removal. And James. She looked at me seriously. This is going to get ugly. She's going to fight back hard. I need to know you're ready. I thought about the gate, the razor wire, the surveillance, the forged documents. I'm ready. That night, back at the house. I made coffee and spread everything across my kitchen table. The deed, the forged incorporation papers, the fake summons, photos of the gate, the fence, the surveillance SUV. A complete picture of corruption. My phone buzzed. Email from the county attorney's office. We've received your complaint. Opening preliminary investigation. Expected timeline, 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks? In 3 weeks. Sandra could do a lot more damage. But at least it was movement. At least someone official was paying attention. I opened my laptop, started a new document, communication log. every interaction with the HOA, every threat, every lie, word for word, timestamp by timestamp. Took me until midnight to reconstruct everything. By the time I finished, I had a narrative, a story of systematic abuse of power, built on forged documents and fake authority. At 2 a.m., I heard something outside. Footsteps on gravel. I went to the window. A figure at the gate. Too dark to see clearly. I grabbed my camera, zoomed in. It was the older man from Saturday, the one in the polo shirt. He was taking photos of my house, of my truck, of the cameras I'd installed. I watched him for 10 minutes. He never saw me, just kept photographing, circling the perimeter. Finally, he got in his car and left. I checked my camera footage. He'd been there 23 minutes total, building their own case. Probably. Looking for evidence, I damaged their fence or trespassed. Good luck with that. I hadn't touched their property. Hadn't gone near the gate except to try to leave. Everything I'd done was legal, documented, defensible. I sent the footage to Rebecca. More surveillance. They're building a counter-narrative. She replied instantly, let them. We have the truth. They have lies. Truth wins. I went to bed with my phone next to me. Alarm set for 6 a.m. Tomorrow we'd file. Tomorrow we'd put them on the defensive. Tomorrow. The gate would start to matter less than the law. And the law, the actual, real, documented law, was on my side. Wednesday morning. Rebecca filed the emergency injunction electronically at 6:30 a.m. By 7, we had a hearing scheduled. Friday, 10 a.m. Judge Catherine Wainwright presiding. I spent Wednesday documenting everything. Set up 4 more cameras covering every angle of my property line. No blind spots. No gaps. Tested them by walking the perimeter. Every step recorded from multiple angles. If anyone touched that fence, if anyone came onto my land, it would be documented 6 ways from Sunday. Then I made a spreadsheet. Violations, log, columns, date, time, type of violation, evidence file, legal statute violated. I went back through everything. Every incident since I'd arrived home. Populated the sheet entry by entry. 49 violations. Color-coded, red for criminal acts, yellow for civil violations, green for harassment. The sheet was mostly red. Sent it to Rebecca. She called 5 minutes later. This is prosecutorial level documentation. If the county attorney doesn't move, I'm escalating to state level. That afternoon, I reached out to neighbors. Not HOA members, the people living outside the subdivision on the edges. Knocked on doors. Introduced myself. Asked if they'd noticed anything unusual. One woman, late 60s, living a quarter-mile down the road, had seen the construction. They put up that fence 2 weeks ago. Middle of the night, I heard the trucks. Thought it was emergency road work. But then it stayed. And that guard showed up. She shook her head. I asked him what was going on. He told me it was private property. Told me to mind my business. Would you be willing to write down what you saw? She hesitated, then nodded. I don't like bullies. By evening, I had 3 witness statements. The woman who'd heard overnight construction, a delivery driver who'd been turned away when trying to bring a package to my address, A former Hollow Creek resident who'd moved out after being fined $2,000 for unauthorized garden decorations. Each statement corroborated my timeline. Each one added weight. I organized everything into 5 folders. 1. Property documents deed. Survey. Easement. 2. HOA documents incorporation. Bylaws. Forged signature. 3. Obstruction evidence photos. Videos. Timestamps. 4. Communication records, emails, letters, recordings. 5. Witness statements affidavits, contact info. Labeled each folder, numbered each page. Created a master index. Made 3 complete copies, 1 for Rebecca, 1 for the county attorney, 1 locked in my safe. Backed up all digital files to 3 separate cloud services. Redundancy. That's what archaeology teaches you. Always preserve the evidence. At 7 p.m., I sat down and wrote an email to the Chattanooga Times Free Press. Subject: HOA fraud and illegal restraint Hollow Creek community. Didn't include everything. Just enough to pique interest. Mentioned the forged signature, the blocked easement, the fake court summons. Attached a few photos. The gate, the razor wire, the incorporation papers with the forged name. Hit send. 25 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. This is Michael Carson, investigative reporter with the Times Free Press. I just received your email. Can we talk? I said yes. Spent the next hour walking him through everything. He took notes, asked sharp questions, requested copies of key documents. I sent them. When we finished, this is a strong story. Mr. Brennan, give me 48 hours to verify everything. Then we'll run it. I hung up feeling something shift. The case was moving beyond just me and Sandra. Beyond legal filings. It was becoming public, visible. And visibility was power. Thursday morning, I checked the cameras. New footage from overnight. Sandra's Lexus parked outside the gate at 1 a.m. She'd been standing next to it, talking on her phone, gesturing animatedly. Couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see her face, tight, stressed, angry. She knew something was coming. Good. Let her worry. Because for the first time since this started, she wasn't in control. I downloaded the clip, added it to the folder. Thursday, 1:14, a.m. HOA. President observed on site. Duration, 18 minutes. Everything logged. Everything stored. I made coffee. Sat on my porch, watching the sunrise through the trees. Tomorrow was the hearing. Tomorrow. A judge would see all the evidence I'd built. Would see the forged signatures and fake summons and illegal gates. Would see Sandra Whitmore for what she really was, a bully with a law degree and a god complex who'd built her power on lies. And lies don't last. They never do. The camera on my windowsill blinked red. Recording. Always recording. Outside. The gate stood dark against the morning sky. But it didn't feel permanent anymore. Because I knew something Sandra didn't. Gates can be removed. Laws can be enforced. And people who build empires on forged signatures eventually run out of places to hide. I just had to keep digging. Keep documenting. Keep pushing. And eventually, the truth would do what it always does. It would surface. Friday morning, 10 a.m. Hamilton County Superior Court. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, high ceilings, a judge's bench at the front, 2 tables for counsel, gallery seating for maybe 60 people, already half full, reporters, neighbors, curious locals who'd read about it online. I recognized faces, the woman who'd heard the construction, the former resident who'd been fined, the delivery driver. They'd come. They were here. At 9:50, Sandra arrived. Not alone. 2 lawyers in expensive suits. They took the opposite table, set up materials. Sandra wore the crimson blazer like armor, black silk blouse underneath, pencil skirt, those patent leather heels, hair perfect, makeup flawless, red lipstick glossy and sharp. She didn't look at me, kept her eyes forward, composed, professional. But I could see the tension in her shoulders. 10 a.m. Exactly. All rise. We stood. Judge Catherine Wainwright entered. Late 50s. Gray hair pulled back. Sharp eyes that missed nothing. She took her seat. We sat. She reviewed the file for 3 full minutes without speaking. Flipped pages. Made notes. Finally looked up. This is an emergency motion for injunctive relief filed by Mr. James Brennan against Hollow Creek Homeowners Association. The allegations are serious. Illegal restraint, fraud, forgery. She looked at Rebecca. Counsel, you may begin. Rebecca stood, walked to the podium, opened her folder. Your Honor, my client's case is straightforward. He owns 43 acres of land deeded in 1972 with a legal easement providing access to County Road 41. This easement is recorded, notarized, and has been in continuous use for 53 years. She pulled out the deed, handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Wainwright examined it, nodded. 3 weeks ago, my client returned to his property after 15 years away. He discovered that the Hollow Creek HOA had installed a locked gate across his easement, completely blocking his only access to public roads. Rebecca clicked a remote. A screen lowered behind the judge's bench. A photo appeared. The gate. Steel and concrete. Razor wire on top. When he requested the gate be removed, the HOA president, she gestured at Sandra, demanded he pay $17,000 in retroactive dues and sign a membership agreement. Click. Next photo. The demand letter. My client refused. Because he had never consented to HOA membership, his property is not within HOA boundaries, and his easement cannot be legally blocked. Click. Side-by-side maps, the county's official boundary map next to the HOA's version. As you can see, Your Honor, the boundaries don't match. The county map clearly shows my client's property outside HOA territory. The HOA's map was drawn to include him without legal basis. Murmurs in the gallery. Click. The forged signature page. Here's the real problem. Your Honor, this signature, Rebecca zoomed in on my name, purporting to consent to HOA membership. It's forged. She pulled out a certified copy of my real signature from the deed, held it up, set it on the document camera, side by side on the screen, the forgery versus the real thing. Completely different. The courtroom went silent. Sandra's lawyer stood. Objection, Your Honor. This is unsubstantiated. Judge Wainwright raised a hand. I can see it's different. Counsel. Sit down. He sat. Sandra's face went pale. Rebecca continued. Click. The fake court summons. It gets worse. Your Honor, this document was delivered to my client on Tuesday. Notice of an injunction hearing, complete with case number, judge's name, official seal. Pause for effect. There's no case. No hearing. No Judge Martin Pierce in Hamilton County. This document is fabricated. The clerk's office has confirmed in writing, she held up a letter, that it's a forgery. The room erupted. Whispers. Gasps. One reporter actually said, "Holy shit," loud enough to hear. Judge Wainwright banged her gavel. Order. Rebecca clicked through the rest. Photos of the razor wire. The surveillance SUV. The guard turning away the delivery driver. The overnight construction. The witness statements. When she finished, she looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, this isn't a property dispute. It's systematic fraud. The HOA forged my client's signature, filed false documents, created fake legal process, and physically imprisoned him on his own land. They need to be stopped. Immediately. She sat down. The courtroom was electric with tension. Judge Wainwright looked at the defense table. Counsel. Sandra's lead lawyer stood. Tall. Silver-haired. Expensive suit. He walked to the podium without notes. Your Honor, my client acknowledges there have been irregularities in how this matter was handled. However, the HOA acted in good faith. They believed Mr. Brennan's property was within their jurisdiction based on county planning documents. The signature issue appears to be a clerical error. Judge Wainwright's voice was sharp. Counsel. That signature isn't even close. Not intentional fraud. He continued. And regarding the court summons, my client denies any knowledge of that document. It may have been created by an overzealous board member without her authorization. The judge leaned forward. Your client is the president. She's responsible for HOA actions. Of course, Your Honor. But criminal intent requires knowledge and willfulness. What about the gate? Judge Wainwright interrupted. The physical blockade of a legal easement. The lawyer paused. That was an error in judgment. The gate has since been removed. My client is willing to formally release any claim to Mr. Brennan's easement. The gate was removed because your client knew this hearing was coming. The judge said flatly, "Don't play games in my courtroom." Rebecca stood. Your Honor, may I respond? Please. She walked back to the podium. The defense claims good faith, but the evidence shows deliberate, calculated fraud. We have an email. She pulled it up on screen. Sent from Ms. First. Whitmore's official HOA address, referencing the fake court case, encouraging my client to attend the non-existent hearing. That shows direct knowledge. Direct participation. Click. Financial records. Furthermore, the HOA has collected over $340,000 in dues and fines over 3 years. Ms. Whitmore receives a salary of $32,000 annually as HOA president. She had financial incentive to expand membership, to force my client to join, to extract fees. She turned to face Sandra directly. This isn't about community standards or property values. It's about power and money. And when Mr. Brennan refused to comply, she escalated to forgery and false imprisonment. Rebecca sat down. Judge Wainwright removed her glasses, looked at Sandra. Ms. Whitmore, stand, please. Sandra stood slowly. The crimson blazer suddenly looked less like armor, more like a costume. You're a licensed attorney in Tennessee, correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you sent a document referencing a court case without verifying its existence. Sandra's voice was barely audible. I forwarded information I received from another board member. I didn't personally verify you're an attorney. Judge Wainwright repeated, her voice ice. You know better. Or you should. She consulted her notes for a long moment, then looked up. I've seen enough. This isn't a gray area. This is clear, deliberate, illegal conduct. She looked at Rebecca. Your injunction is granted. The HOA is permanently barred from claiming any jurisdiction over Mr. Brennan's property, from blocking his easement, from demanding any fees or dues. Scattered applause in the gallery. She banged her gavel. I'm not finished. Furthermore, she looked at Sandra's lawyer. I'm awarding damages. Mr. Brennan is entitled to compensation for illegal restraint, emotional distress, loss of property use, and legal fees. The HOA will pay Mr. Brennan $55,000, due within 30 days. The courtroom erupted. Additionally, Ms. Whitmore is personally fined $25,000, payable to the court, and she is barred from holding any HOA leadership position in Hamilton County for 15 years. Sandra sat down hard. Her lawyer's hand went to her shoulder. Finally, Judge Wainwright's voice cut through the noise. I'm referring this matter to the county attorney for criminal prosecution. The evidence supports charges of forgery, fraud, and extortion, all felonies. She looked directly at Sandra. You're an attorney, an officer of the court. You should be held to a higher standard, not given a pass for abusing it. Bang. The gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Everyone stood as Judge Wainwright exited. The moment she was gone, the courtroom exploded with conversation. Rebecca turned to me, smiled. We did it. I nodded. The tension that had been coiled in my chest for 3 weeks finally loosened. Thank you. The criminal case will take time, she said. Months, probably. But this part is done. You're free. I looked across the room. Sandra was still sitting, staring at nothing. Her lawyers were packing quickly, whispering. She looked small, defeated. I didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel vindicated, just tired. The county attorney approached, same man who'd promised to investigate. Mr. Brennan. He shook my hand. I'll need you to come to my office next week. Formal statement. We're moving forward with charges forgery, extortion, fraud. He glanced at Sandra. Given her record, she's looking at real time, 2 to 5 years per count. I thanked him, walked outside into bright October sunlight. Rebecca joined me on the courthouse steps. You know what you did here? She asked. Won a case. No. You proved the system works. When you have evidence, when you follow procedure, when you refuse to give up, the law protects you. Even against people with power and money and credentials. I looked back at the courthouse. She thought she was untouchable. They always do. Until someone fights back. 1 week later, the gate was gone completely. Not just opened, removed. Posts. Concrete. All of it. The road looked like it had 50 years ago. Just dirt and gravel. I drove through without stopping. All the way to town and back. No barriers. No guards. No threats. Just freedom. The criminal trial was scheduled for March. Sandra had been arraigned on 3 counts: forgery, fraud, extortion, pleaded not guilty, posted bail. But her law license was suspended. Her HOA position was gone. And her reputation was destroyed. The newspaper had run a 3-part series. HOA president charged with fraud, forged signatures, fake court documents. Hollow Creek residents demand accountability. Several other families came forward with complaints. Excessive fines, forced upgrades, threats of liens. The HOA dissolved entirely. Board members resigned. Assets were frozen pending investigation. And me. I went back to work. Montana project. Wyoming project. A museum consultation in Santa Fe. The work I loved. The work that made sense. One evening, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Brennan. This is Martha Hendricks. I live in Hollow Creek, or I did. I just wanted to say thank you. We paid Sandra $12,000 in fines over 2 years. Thought we had no choice. Because of you. We're getting it back. You showed us we didn't have to accept it. I didn't know what to say. Your welcome felt inadequate. I just did what anyone should do. I finally said, stood up for what was right. Most people don't, she replied. Most people just pay and stay quiet. You fought back. That matters. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time thinking about that. How many people had paid? How many had been bullied into compliance? How many had wanted to fight but didn't have the resources or knowledge or courage? The system only works when people use it. When they document, when they push back, when they refuse to accept that might makes right. Sandra Whitmore had built her power on one assumption, that people wouldn't fight. She was wrong about me. And because she was wrong about me, dozens of other families got justice too. 6 months later, I was working at a Clovis site in Montana when Rebecca called. The trial ended yesterday. Guilty on all counts. My hand tightened on the phone. Sentencing. 3 years on forgery. 3 on fraud. 5 on extortion, 2 run concurrently. She'll serve 4 with good behavior. Plus 5 years probation. Full restitution to all affected residents. And permanent disbarment. I sat down on a rock outcropping, staring out at the Montana plains. It's over then. It's over. Justice was served. Slowly, imperfectly, but it was served. After we hung up, I pulled out my field notebook, the same one I'd used to document everything at the beginning. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, Lessons. Power attracts people who want control. Most people won't challenge authority, even fake authority. They'll comply because it's easier than fighting. Documentation is more powerful than anger. Facts don't lie. Photos don't get emotional. Timestamps don't forget. The system works slowly, imperfectly, but it works when you follow the process. Power built on lies is fragile. All it takes is one person willing to expose the truth. I closed the notebook, looked out at the dig site, thousands of years of human history buried beneath my feet. My job was uncovering truth, whether in soil or in courtrooms. And I'd just proven that truth, properly documented and patiently pursued, always wins. Sandra Whitmore thought she could cage me with a forged signature and a steel gate. Instead, she caged herself with lies that couldn't stand up to evidence. That night, working by lantern light in my tent, I got an email from the county attorney, Mr. Brennan, final update. In addition to Ms. Whitmore's conviction, 2 former board members have been charged with conspiracy. The HOA has been permanently dissolved. Your case set precedent. Tennessee now requires criminal background checks for HOA officers and mandatory oversight for any dues exceeding $5. 000 annually. You changed the law. Thought you should know. I read it twice. I just wanted my road back. Instead, I'd change the law. Sometimes justice isn't just about winning your own case. Sometimes it's about making sure no one else has to fight the same battle. I closed my laptop, turned off the lantern, lay back on my cot. Outside, the Montana wind whispered through the grass. And for the first time in a year, I slept without dreaming about gates. Just dreams about digging, about careful excavation, about uncovering things people thought were buried forever. Because that's what I do. I dig. I document. I prove. And when someone tries to bury the truth, I bring it back to light. Every single time.